Iron Tip short story by Ayatullah Nurjati. Once upon a time, in a melting pot in a rural area far from the crowds, there was a large field where there were lots of piles of objects that were no longer used, from small to giant ones. Lots of residents who inhabit that place, even though they are fighting each other, they know each other. Call it Zach's, a lump of worn out scrap metal stabbed into the ground, frowning his forehead, furious and a little rusty. The sun that supports it is gradually feeling bored, maybe because it is shining on a group of objects it seems that are getting more and more shiny every day instead of getting dull and rusty. He could only witness the blue beauty at the end of the sky with his dull and no longer young body, knowing that he would soon retire. Wheels, axles, couplings and accessories attached to it are sitting on the edge of the field. His mustache is no longer frightening, but instead makes him a piece of scrap metal that is a world-renowned politician or even a long-dead comedian. In his time, he was indeed the best four-wheeled vehicle made of iron in the 1930s. A very tall stature with four legs that is always never dirty even though the road is dusty and dirty. He always prays and hopes to God to be merged into something new and beneficial for humans, but no one or company wants him to be melted down. At the recycling site, it depends on the buyers who come, and whoever the residents there always hope will be recycled into something new and have an elegant appearance. His friends are also a bunch of scrap metal of various types, names and no longer being used by the owner. Double-decker buses, trailer trucks, cars including himself which has more than four wheels have regenerated into heavy equipment, or even worse ones become tanks which are melted down with the armor of their biggest enemy. They are forced to be friends even though it is clear that they are true rivals in the name of glory. Some of the last occupants seem to think that it was just an illusion for a fancy car with a tie because it was recycled and then leveled up, as their colleagues always said, because they knew each other. Without a lump of iron that is recycled, melted down and sprinkled on, it would not be possible for all of this to exist. Unlikely's axe, Dow Daddy's old car, known as Dowdy, was transformed into the best performer when the big boss brought it to the place where it was melted down to buy all armored vehicles for military purposes. Arrogantly clad in a diesel engine as its flagship pacemaker, as if it roared deafeningly and wanted to inform all the residents of the old iron steel shop and the like that he had moved levels or gone up a class. Zax can't do anything because he is currently just a lump of iron without an engine that he can move, because it has been a long time since their body was separated when his boss had to find an alternative gasoline engine for his younger favorite vehicle. But even though his body has